Okay. All right.
Time to rally.
Yeah, here we are.
Back from Panama.
Yeah. Panama, the country, not Panama City in Florida.
Right. We flew to Panama City.
But not the Panama City in Florida. We didn't see any airbrush t-shirts.
You're right.
Not a single airbrush t-shirt.
That's how we knew we were in Panama.
That's the main reason. That's how you can tell.
We had some music experiences in Panama.
Yeah, we did. We were there for 10 days, counting travel on both ends. Kind of heavy travel, but it was fine. And but gosh, what a night and day to New Zealand. We talked to everybody about New Zealand, and it seemed in New Zealand you could not find anybody playing music, right. Hardly at all. We mentioned maybe a couple guys with the guitars in some restaurants, and other than that, any music you did hear was 20 or 30 years old, American English, old music. I found Panama to be very different than that.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So it wasn't I was just saying the guidebooks are always like, oh, go to Casco Viejo. There's live music all over the place every night, and it wasn't like that, but there was a lot of new music, there was a lot of original music, there was a lot of Panamanian music, and we just had some cool musical experiences that we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we did run into no fewer than 3 concerts by accident.
Total by accident. Yeah. So what happened first? Let's see. We got there, and then we got
there. You know, we were just hanging out at the pool at the hotel because it was a travel day, and we just were relaxing.
Right.
And it was evening, and we heard what sounded like a pretty big concert going on.
Oh, that's right.
Not far away. It sounded like it was a few blocks from our hotel.
Right.
We hear the thump, 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 thump going on.
And I mean, massive, like Red Rocks level sound. Like we're not talking just like, oh, there's a garage band playing around the corner. Like
it had that big sound.
Yeah. And we didn't...
no, we didn't go that night.
We didn't check it out. We just figured, who knows what that was, whatever.
Probably too late. We're tired. Travel, blah, blah, blah. We'll go out tomorrow. So the second night, we heard it happening again.
Right.
And so we went and checked it out.
Yeah.
And so there were these people streaming through the neighborhood. I mean, it was a 5-minute walk from the hotel. So we just walked over there.
Yeah, it was right there, yeah.
And we turned in, and there were no tickets or anything. You just walk right in. The production on this thing was like Coachella size.
It was massive.
It was, absolutely massive. It was probably the biggest outdoor stage I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, very close. And I wish I remembered this school. It was maybe a college or something. But so they had, it was a large green, and then they had that crazy big...
Oh, yeah.
Just this... it was like a natural amphitheater where they had this very large grass slope going up to whatever building was at the top.
I thought that was a government building or something.
And it was a government building, or it was right next to a high school, whatever it was. They had this natural amphitheater there. And the first night that we went, by the way, we did go back, gosh, it had to have been, thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fun thing was that this was like a community drumming event.
Right.
And so you could buy a plastic bucket, like Home Depot size plastic bucket.
Like a 5-gallon.
Yeah, 5-gallon. And a couple of sticks.
Uh-huh.
You could either rent it for $5 or you could buy it, the whole thing for $8. And they had them all over the place. And people and so like the whole place had people with, some people brought drums, but some people were just banging on the 5-gallon buckets. And the band was teaching people how to play patterns. And so what they did when we were coming in was they were doing Oye Como Va.
Right.
The dun 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 dun, dun whatever the pattern is.
Dun 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 dun. That main riff, and we're getting everybody to these thousands of people, 10,000 people, to try to drum that rhythm. Ba 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 ba. Oh yeah, come on.
Yeah.
It was thunderous. I mean, and again, we can't exaggerate how loud. I mean, they had huge jumbotrons.
Oh, the time we went back, I counted how many LED screens there were,
Oh, yeah?
front and back, and it was like 50, or it was like over 55.
Yeah.
And the ones around the stage were several, like they were like 8 or 9 stories
They
high.
were 8 or 9 stories high. This was
entire-
not a normal...
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we counted like, oh gosh, the whole height of the entire stage production was like 12 to 15 stories high.
The scaffolding behind the... Yeah.
Yeah, I counted about 150 light fixtures just on one half of the stage. So there's probably 300 light fixtures.
Right.
Shining on,
Easily.
Spotlights. I mean, moving heads. I mean, it was so big.
It was unbelievably
And
big.
free to walk into. We were just so confused about, like, who is covering the cost of this? What is the motivation for this? Is this just like a community building thing?
Yeah, I don't know. But we watched this whole show, and for at least, well, to be fair, that night we were talking about, it was some sort of full moon festival.
Yeah.
Whether it was the rising of I couldn't quite pick out the Spanish. No, I mean, you know it way better. But anyway, it was some sort of full moon festivals. They were doing some sort of celebration of it being a full moon. So there was a full moon out, and it was very beautiful, and it was coming up over the big crazy docks, like way in the distance. You could see the big crazy cranes and stuff for the Panama Canal. And the... You know, it was just, and it was so much fun, though, the way they were, like, teaching the audience these rhythms and getting and it was a bunch of kids doing it, but then there were adults there that were just equally into it.
Yeah.
And I saw a bunch of people who brought their own percussion instruments.
Yeah.
Like, they had their own güiros, whatever, and, you know, shakers and all this stuff, and just everybody was playing along to this music.
It was pretty crazy.
And this was just minutes from our hotel. Nothing published. No one told us about this. We were just like, what's all that noise? Let's go see what it is.
And then, so like we stayed for a while. We walked around the food stalls and stuff, and got what kind? We got what kind of sausage was that? It was
they just called it chorizo.
Oh yeah. So
On a
it
stick.
was like it was cut in
It's
a
like
spiral
cut on a stick.
Yeah.
And then
lots of meat on sticks.
Yeah, that's...
But then we went home, and we could still hear the music going on.
Yeah.
And actually, as we walked around, we could hear the music going on. And it was a bunch of different bands at different times. And my gosh, the variety of music they played, that's why I couldn't figure out, like, what is this show?
Oh,
because
right.
we heard Beethoven's Ninth. We heard Englishmen in New York by Sting.
Yeah.
We heard a Coldplay tune.
Yeah, because they sort of had this reggae band that we were first talking about that was doing Oye Como Va. I mean, they weren't a reggae band, obviously, but they were a Latin, and they had a lot of that reggae groove to it. I'm sure it's whatever part of the world that is. It's a normal thing, but they were doing some tunes. And then they brought out this orchestra, and at this point we were walking around and stuff, but they brought out like an orchestra and classical singers, and they did Beethoven's Ninth. And
they did the theme from Star Wars.
The theme from Star Wars.
It's like the biggest songs, but in such disparate genres.
In probably 3 hours of hearing this show, they were doing just everything. It was wild.
It was crazy.
And yeah. So apparently that's a thing in Panama City that they do, because they spent a lot. This was not a neighborhood production. I know we've said it several times. This was like the biggest thing we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Just lights and, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thousands of people. Yeah, it was really wild, and the energy was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went back the next week, because we
like
were
a
back
week
in
later.
town. Yeah, the next Saturday. And it was something completely different. But it was, the whole production was still there.
Right.
And we watched I don't know if it was local or national, but like a local rap artist,
right.
Latino rap artist, do his thing. He had dancers. The light show was, if you had sensitivity to light flashing, you would be in trouble at this show.
You'd be in a lot of trouble.
Because those 55 LED screens were just all doing different things, like flashing on. Anyway.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the first show more than that one.
Right. That one was more of the second one was more of a single guy concert. He was clearly the singer star.
Yeah, at least as much as we saw. But you heard like an indie rock band playing.
Yeah, there was the reason I wanted to walk down is there was this really kind of cool rock band.
Yeah.
By the time we got there was the reggaeton. Well, he wasn't reggaeton. A note about music in Panama, since we are talking about our experience. Man, almost everything had that reggaeton beat. It was ridiculous.
Everything, yeah. And some of it had some clave. There was some more like...
Yeah, a little more clave.
Yeah. Well, I guess that fits too, but... I guess that does have a clave, though, right?
Yeah, and that's just everything. When you were in the cabs, when you were in the restaurants, when you were everywhere, that is the one drum beat. Yeah. We're just as guilty in America because we've got the 4/4 drum beat. But,
yeah.
And obviously that beats in 4, but we have the same thing but it really permeates that you just hear that thing over and over and over. And I guess that's where we can move to too. I found it interesting that every single cab and Uber you got into, we don't usually use Uber, but in Panama, Uber is very big. They don't have Lyft. And you can, of course, take cabs, and it's ridiculous. There are cabs everywhere. It is.
If you stop, and we were obviously tourists, but if you stop on a road, you'll get
1 second.
You'll get honked out by cabs asking if you want to pick up.
I mean, we stayed at Bocas del Toro, which is very far from Panama City, and it's very small, and it's very out there. I mean, very primitive, and you're in the jungle, and I mean also a nice tourist area, but at the same time, we were staying 8 kilometers up a
dirt road.
Not 8 kilometers.
Kilometers.
Sorry, about 6 miles up a rutted dirt road, and then I went on a long walk about 2.5 miles further up. One day, and still there were cabs just like, beep, beep, you want to ride? Unbelievable. Anyway, we took Ubers a lot because that is an even easier way to do it, and you don't have to negotiate prices and stuff. Either way, cab, Uber, whatever it is, everybody had music playing, and it was a very normal thing.
Yeah, and it seemed like local or regional, but like they weren't playing like in New Zealand we were hearing music from home.
Yeah.
This was all regional, like, cultural music.
Well, and some of the regional radio was amazing. Like, remember the one, it's when we were in Panama City, we were going to the airport, and it was the local morning show.
Right.
And apparently the local morning show was just them playing music, and then the DJs yelling over it.
Yeah.
And laughing.
Yeah, he would like turn down the song and like do a hype call or like yell something.
Yeah.
Or insert one of the like pre-recorded hype calls like La Letra, and then bring the music back up.
And then everybody would laugh, and they would like leave the laughter in the song.
The song went on for like 10 minutes, and he just kept like hyping it.
Just unbelievable. Or the lyrics would be like, bailando, which means dancing, and he would like click in and be like, yeah, baile. And that was the show.
This is like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was like, and there was so much of that kind of like original, like clearly local, and even when we were in Bocas, even riding in some of those taxis up and down that dirt road, what they were listening to was clearly a local station with clearly a local DJ jumping in and saying a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's an aside. I had so much trouble. You're much better at Spanish than I am. I mean, wildly better. But I tend to kind of be able to hang in there and follow it.
You're really good for, like, not studying it ever.
Not really speaking Spanish. Like, I can usually understand what's being said. I can't always, speak back in Spanish, but I know what you said. The accent in Panama was throwing me off to where I was like, I just have zero idea. Like, it was amazing. And it was true of the radio, too, where people would be talking on the radio, and I'm like, every word in that sentence started with a B, and I don't think there are that many Spanish words that start with B's. It was so hard for me. But, it's that southern thing of being mush mouth, so they're pretty far south. Anyway, though, to get back on track, after that first night of seeing that crazy concert. Another night we just went out in the Casco Viejo,
the old part of town,
which is the old part of town, versus Casco Antiguo, which is the ancient part of town.
Right.
We were in the old part of town.
Neither of which are the downtown.
No, they're not. Really cool part of town. Very full of restaurants and bars and a lot of historical stuff. You know, it was the part of the town that was, I guess, apparently like late 1600s, 1700s. Kind of that was the... so you just be walking and it's bars and it's neat and it's old, and then you just see these like a crazy big ruin or a church or just a facade of something. Anyway, we're walking around and having fun, and we chanced upon a neighborhood concert, much like we do when we do those like town concerts.
Right. It was, yeah, exactly. So it was like in the Central Plaza on a stage. And the coolest thing was that it was an all-female band, and they rocked.
Oh, that's right. It was the Vivencias.
Yes. Vivencias.
Vivencias.
You got it right.
Or in Panamanian, Vivencias.
Vivencias. Yeah, they were great. I mean, we could hear it from a ways away, and we got there, and there were people dancing, and we even danced a little bit.
We danced a little bit, yeah.
It was just a lot of fun. It was super high quality.
Mostly, they were so good.
Mostly live. I think we identified that there were some tracks here and there.
They were on tracks, but
it wasn't like a heavily tracked production. Super tight, really great singer, really interacted with the audience and was responding to them.
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Remember, she noticed that some of them were from like a certain province or for another country or something.
Right.
And was kind of like joking with them and like getting them riled up, and they were all like cheering their section, and they were dancing bigger and stuff.
Oh, it was just, and there were these huge conga lines weaving through the square.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize any of the tunes they were doing.
No, me either.
But apparently a lot of the people in the crowd did, because there was so much singing along. And there was one song in particular I remember that was just like people were screaming it out like it was Free Falling by Tom Petty or something. They were just like... So apparently in that musical world, in that genre, that's a very well-known... So they were playing the hits. It just struck me how much it was exactly like... in the summertime, what Petty Nicks does, where you do those city festival type things, and they're just kind of for whoever shows up, and they're for that section of town, and it was just a mirror image thing. I mean, they were playing in front of a way cooler, this old...
Oh, in front of an old cathedral.
400-year-old cathedral or something, and all this stuff, but it was neat that it was very much that same kind of thing. And what a great band, all female, great bass player, like really great bass player. And that was fun to kind of run into and just be like, wow, this is something you just chanced upon.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You chanced upon some cool things.
Yeah. And let's see, what else did we do?
Musically, I think the only other thing I can remember is on our last night there, we were in the rum bar. We went back to the rum bar, and I noticed a brass section walk by.
Oh, right.
On the street, and then later on we heard a marching band style something going on. I don't know what it was because we were going home to go to bed. But
well, I don't know if it was related, but that same day, and I literally don't know. There was also a big political rally.
Yeah.
We were just in an Uber driving back to the hotel to get cleaned up and then go out for the night. And they had blocked off a couple blocks, and our Uber driver was a local, and he was clever enough to figure out how to get around it and not get us stuck in the traffic. But I noticed how much drum section and horns there were going on along with whatever political rally it was, and I don't know if it was connected to those guys being down there at the same, but it was a similar thing. Yeah. I thought it was also, we were at the I guess it's called the French Plaza. Right.
Yeah.
Which is right on the water there at the edge of Panama City, and then you're looking back across over to where all the skyscrapers are, and it's where they honor the French effort in trying to build the Panama Canal, which they were not successful, but they lost a lot of people. And So they have this lovely plaza and statues and a lovely walk. And I think it's some of the old defensive walls of the town. But it was interesting that we were there a couple of times and they had different buskers.
Yes.
And it was interesting, that the buskers were very high tech. They had pretty modern PA. They were running effects and stuff and loopers and
or playing to tracks.
And they were playing to tracks.
Right. So it wasn't just like a guy with a guitar.
Right. It wasn't that. And it was, and they were really high quality. I mean, the second time it was one of those woodwind MIDI controllers where you blow into it. You do blow into it, but then also you hit keys. But because it's MIDI, it can simulate being a flute or a sax or whatever you want it to be. So it's a woodwind MIDI controller, and he was using that.
A lot more attention than I did to that.
I don't know if you've noticed before, but I'm a little bit into music here.
Oh my gosh, we went to the bio museum, museum, and there was a big rubber fig tree outside of it, huge,
massive tree, unbelievable.
It was like the tree of life. It was
right.
It was this huge tree, and they grow these roots straight down from their branches. Like, the branches go out so far.
I mean, we're talking the canopy of the tree is probably 200 yards, 300 yards. I mean, it's just a huge tree.
But as the branches go out, they start dropping roots down, straight down to the ground. So there's, like, all these roots hanging down.
And then those grow into, like, tree-sized.
Yeah.
That are just holding up branches.
Yes.
You know?
But so anyway, we're visiting the fig tree. And there's this tiny little stage by the fig tree, and it's got a PA on it. And Justin's like, "Ooh!" He's like, "Oh, what kind is this?" He like checks out the specs, look at the back of it. I'm like, "Oh, I see what really interests Justin here."
I didn't
in this
recognize.
Natural environment.
I didn't recognize the PA.
It was a new brand.
It was a new brand. Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
I think it was called Blast KB. I still haven't looked up the specs. I will tell you that at the Panama Canal, we did go visit the actual Panama Canal, the Miraflores locks. And that was amazing to see. And I did notice they are using QSC CP8s for all of their public address needs. So I did check that.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. Yeah. It was a wild thing because they have so much of the same... so much of the gear was the same, and it's just weird how international everywhere is now. It's just there's not that much. Everything's kind of, but I will say the music was interesting and different, and as always, I Shazammed a bunch of stuff, and
it was really like the music really fit the place. Obviously, I mean, it was cool to be there, to be in a place that was not playing American music. Basically, like, I would have been disappointed if we got in Ubers and been identified as tourists and the driver, like, switched over to some American rock station.
We heard almost none.
Yeah.
I know one Uber ride, they were playing some Ryan Seacrest countdown show. Like, top 26 this week is whoever with whatever, and top 25 this week is Harry Styles with... and then we were in another... We were downtown Panama City, and we took another Uber ride, and it was the young guy, and he was listening to some radio station that was playing indie rock. Like, they played The Strokes.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And I think they played Phoebe Bridgers, and it was just, like, very current, just indie rock.
And it stood out for being something we hadn't.
It was very like, what is going on? And I was paying attention to the stereo because I was like, does he have is this his music? And it was like, no, it was a radio station. Oh. So I guess that does exist. But for the most part, it was.
Yeah. Makes you want to move.
Yep. And that is, that's pretty much it. That was our trip in Panama.
That was the musical side of our trip to Panama.
Yeah. So we are back, and I guess we're going to get back on the normal schedule. We got normal music stuff coming up this week. I know I have recording all week, and then we are actually back to performing at Boot Barn Hall.
Yes.
this Saturday. So that'll be
Yep.
a blast to be back with the Petty Nicks guys. And it's been too long for me without a show.
Yeah.
I know you've had a few, but I haven't had any. So, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting back to regular life. I love it here. I love traveling, but I love it here. This is home.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. Okay, well, let's close this one off.
All right.
We are sponsored, as always, by Performance High.
Voice and Music Studio.
And
Panamanian rum.
And Panamanian rum.
Pedro Mandigas.
Pedro Mandigas.
Wish we could get it here.
Yeah, I know. It was so good. They make their own, and they have a little place, and we tried some, and it was so good, but it's just they don't make it. You can't buy it here, but
yeah.
Anyway, Panamanian rum, Abuelo is pretty good too, so you can get that here.
Okay.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much, and
see you next week.
Bye.